Mom testifies against me in court to try to get me to pay child support for a baby that isn't mine because DNA doesn't matter. Family is family, but months later, I finally revealed my ex-wife's disgusting truth and Mom is mad. The entire family is distancing themselves from her, and my own dad wants to divorce her. My mom took the stand in court trying to force me to pay child support for a baby that isn't mine. She claimed DNA doesn't matter because after all, family is family. But a few months later, I finally exposed my ex-wife's disgusting secret, and now Mom's become the pariah. The entire family is distancing themselves from her, and even my dad wants a divorce. I'll start by saying my mother always dreamed of having a daughter. I remember how excited she was when my parents found out they were expecting their first child, me. But everything changed when she learned I was going to be a boy. She was devastated, and she never hid that disappointment. Throughout my life, she'd remind me how much she wished for a daughter. My parents had planned on having more kids because Mom's heart was set on having a girl. Unfortunately, after I was born, Mom developed severe health problems that made it impossible to have any more children. The thought of never being able to conceive again was heartbreaking for her. A loss I believe she still carries every day. I also noticed how she would lavish extra love and attention on my female cousins. Extra gifts, affection, and care. It was as if she was trying to give them the daughterly love she'd always longed for. For most of my life I accepted it. I knew she loved me too. That is, until my ex-wife Sophia entered the picture. Transition to the Sophia story. Sophia was the daughter of my mother's long-lost best friend from high school. A friend my mom reconnected with after years apart. The moment Mom met Sophia, she was blown away by her beauty, and became obsessed with the idea that Sophia was the perfect match for me. I was single at the time, and although Mom had tried setting me up with other women before, nothing had ever stuck. This time she was relentless. For weeks, she kept telling me how stunning Sophia was and how great we'd be together. Eventually I gave in, not because I was really interested but just to shut my mom up. I agreed to a blind date, hoping it would quiet her constant praises of Sophia. When I finally met her, she was indeed incredibly beautiful. But as the night went on, I realized there wasn't much depth behind that beauty. I always like to know what drives a person, what their goals and dreams are. When I asked Sophia about her ambitions, she told me without hesitation that her dream was to be a stay-at-home mom. That answer left me feeling uneasy. There wasn't anything wrong with wanting to raise a family, but at that point in my life I wasn't even planning on having kids soon. I wanted someone with passion. A person with career goals or a personal pursuit beyond just starting a family. When I pressed her for more details, she simply said she wanted to be a stay-at-home wife, explaining that her own mother had been one until her dad passed away, and that it was the secret to her parents' successful marriage. While I could respect that, it just wasn't what I was looking for. After that date, I was clearly disappointed. I had gone into it mostly to appease my mom, and I knew deep down that Sophia wasn't the right match for me. When I told my mom, she was visibly upset, as if I had betrayed her by not giving Sophia a chance. She kept insisting that if I tried a little harder I'd see what she saw. But I made up my mind. It was best if we both moved on. The forced date incident. Not long after, my mom invited me over to her house, something she did often. But this time when I arrived I found Sophia there too. My mom had arranged another meeting, practically forcing us together. As soon as I walked in, both my parents slipped out with mischievous smiles saying, "Enjoy your date." I was mortified. There we stood, awkwardly, in the middle of my parents' home, with neither of us knowing what to say. Instead of making an excuse to leave, we exchanged a few awkward laughs and eventually sat down to talk. Sophia admitted openly that she had liked me after our first date and had assumed I felt the same. But when I never called her back, she ended up feeling confused. I gently explained that although she was kind and beautiful, our goals in life were just too different. She wanted to be a stay-at-home wife, and I was looking for someone with ambitions beyond that. Then Sophia shared that she wasn't planning to do nothing with her time. She was very involved in volunteer work at her church, helping children and those in need. That side of her gave me a new perspective, a warm, caring nature that I hadn't fully appreciated before. Despite my reservations, I decided to give her another chance. Sophia and I started dating seriously for about a year, and eventually we got engaged. Around the same time I was promoted at work, which boosted my income and made me feel secure enough to support us. Yet, neither of us had really planned on starting a family immediately. Still, our mothers, especially mine, kept pushing us, reminding us that Sophia's biological clock was ticking. Once we got engaged, my mom took over the wedding planning. She spared no expense, determined to throw the grandest wedding ever, as if it were her own daughter's dream wedding. Every detail, from the venue to the flowers and guest list, was obsessively managed by her. The ceremony turned out more lavish than I'd ever imagined, but seeing how happy Sophia was made it all worthwhile. Life after the wedding and honeymoon, I dove back into my demanding job, while Sophia moved in with me. As we settled into married life, she embraced her role as a stay-at-home wife, and she continued her volunteer work at the local church she loved. But soon enough, I began to notice strange changes in her routine. We had never lived together before, so I was learning all these new details about her day-to-day habits. One thing that struck me was her insistence that I send money to her mother every month. She argued that we had plenty and that it was my duty as a good son-in-law to help out. This had never come up before our marriage. I'd always assumed her uncle took care of her mom's needs. Then there was the fact that Sophia started coming home really late. I expected that, as a stay-at-home wife, she'd be around during the day to manage household responsibilities like cooking and cleaning. Instead, she always rushed in late at night, frantically putting dinner together. Whenever I asked why, she said she was out helping someone, a homeless person or a troubled kid in the community. I didn't want to discourage her from doing meaningful work, but I did expect some consistency in managing our home. Our meals became erratic, and she often just threw something together. That's when I started questioning everything. Closing reflection. This is where my story stands today, caught between family expectations, my own values, and a truth that turned my world upside down. Why mom took the stand in court, trying to force me to pay child support for a baby that isn't even mine. She claimed that DNA doesn't matter. Family is family. But just months later, I exposed my ex-wife's disgusting secret, and suddenly mom became the villain. The whole family started distancing themselves from her, and even my dad's considering divorce. Personal backstory. I've always known that my mother longed for a daughter. I remember the excitement in her voice when my parents learned they were expecting their first child, me. But everything changed the moment she found out I was going to be a boy. She was devastated, and she never hid that disappointment. Throughout my life, she'd remind me how much she dreamed of having a daughter. My parents even planned to have more kids because mom's heart was set on having a girl. Unfortunately, after I was born, severe health issues made it impossible for her to conceive again. I can only imagine the pain of realizing that her dream would never come true. A weight she's carried for years. Over time, I noticed how she lavished extra love and attention on my female cousins. Extra gifts, affectionate gestures, the whole works. For most of my life, I accepted that as just who she was. I knew she loved me too, until my ex-wife Sophia came into the picture. Meeting Sophia was the daughter of my mom's long-lost best friend from high school, a friend my mom reconnected with after years apart. The moment my mom met Sophia, she was blown away by her beauty and became obsessed with the idea that Sophia was the perfect match for me. I was single, and though my mom had set me up with other women before, nothing ever stuck. This time, however, she was relentless. For weeks, she kept telling me how stunning Sophia was and how well we'd fit together. Reluctantly, I agreed to a blind date, not because I was truly interested, but just to shut my mom up. When I finally met Sophia, she was undeniably beautiful. But as the night wore on, I realized there wasn't much substance behind that beauty. I asked her what her dreams and goals were, and without hesitation, she told me her one true ambition was to be a stay-at-home mom. That answer left me uneasy. I wasn't planning on having kids anytime soon, and I wanted someone driven by a passion, whether in a career or a personal pursuit, rather than someone content with a life solely defined by domesticity. After that date, I was clearly disappointed. When I shared my thoughts with my mom, she was visibly upset, as if I'd wronged her by not giving Sophia a real chance. She kept insisting that if I just tried a little harder, I'd see what she saw. But I had made up my mind. It was best for both of us to move on. The forced encounter. Not long after, mom invited me over to her house, as she often did. But this time when I arrived, I discovered Sophia was there too. My mom had arranged another chance meeting, practically forcing us together. As soon as I walked in, both my parents slipped out with mischievous smiles saying, "Enjoy your date." I was mortified. We stood there, awkward and speechless, in the middle of my parents' home. I could have left, but I didn't want to embarrass her further. She was just as much a victim of my mom's overzealous matchmaking as I was. Instead, we exchanged nervous laughs and eventually sat down to talk. Sophia admitted openly that after our first date, she had liked me and assumed I felt the same. But when I never called or reached out, she was left confused. I tried to explain gently that while she was kind and beautiful, our goals were too different. She wanted a quiet life as a stay-at-home wife, and I was looking for someone with bigger ambitions. Then she opened up about her volunteer work at church, how she spent her days helping kids and those in need. That gave me a new perspective on her, revealing a genuinely caring nature beneath her simple dreams. Even with my doubts, I decided to give her another chance. We dated for about a year before getting engaged, and around that time I was promoted at work, which boosted my income and gave me the confidence to support us. Still, neither of us had immediate plans for kids, but our mothers, especially mine, kept reminding us that Sophia's biological clock was ticking. After the engagement, my mom took over the wedding planning, sparing no expense to create a lavish ceremony, as if it were her own daughter's dream wedding. Everything from the venue to the guest list was meticulously arranged, and while the ceremony was grander than I ever expected, seeing Sophia's happiness made it all worthwhile. Life after marriage. Once we settled into married life, I went back to my demanding job while Sophia moved in and embraced her role as a stay-at-home wife, at least on paper. But soon I started noticing inconsistencies. I learned new details about her daily routine that hadn't come up when we were dating. For one, she began insisting that I send money to her mom every month, arguing that it was my duty as a good son-in-law. This had never been an issue before. I always assumed her uncle took care of her mother's needs. Even more troubling, Sophia began coming home very late, despite her supposed role as a homemaker. I expected her to be around during the day handling chores like cooking and cleaning, yet she'd rush in late at night and scramble to start dinner. Whenever I asked why, she claimed she was out helping someone, a homeless person here, a troubled kid there. At first I tried not to make a big deal out of it, but over time my frustration grew. I talked to her calmly several times, asking how she could balance her volunteer work with her home responsibilities. Each time she promised to change, to do better, but nothing ever changed. It was always the same excuses. Late dinners, undone chores, being too busy helping others. One weekend, when she was again out volunteering, I decided to surprise her at the church where she claimed to work. I thought it might be nice to see her in her element, and maybe even lend a hand. When I arrived, I asked around for Sophia, expecting to see her in the middle of her work. But everyone at the church looked puzzled. No one recognized her. After asking several people, it became clear. Sophia had never even set foot there. That realization hit me hard. For months, she told me she spent her days at that church, and now I learned she hadn't been there at all. I tried to convince myself I had just misunderstood the details, but doubts started to creep in. Later that evening, when she came home, I kept my cool. I casually asked how her day went. She launched into her rehearsed story about how hard she'd worked and all the people she'd helped. Then I asked directly, "Which church did you volunteer at today?" Sure enough, she repeated the same name, the very church I had visited. That was when it all clicked. She had been lying to me not just once but repeatedly. I needed the truth. The following day, the discovery, the very next day I decided to follow her. Instead of going to work, I parked a few feet from our house, close enough to keep an eye on her without being seen. I made up my mind. I was going to see where she really spent her day, hoping to find that she'd prove me wrong by going to that church. I even planned to later confess my doubts, apologize for letting my insecurities get the best of me, but what I saw shattered any hope of that. An hour after leaving, I saw her step out of the front door. But today, she wasn't dressed in her usual modest clothes. She was wearing shorts and a tank top, an outfit I'd never seen her in before. I watched as she got into a car, and instead of heading to the church, she drove in the opposite direction. My heart raced. I followed her discreetly, staying a few cars back. Eventually, she pulled into a quiet neighborhood and parked in front of a house I didn't recognize. It wasn't her mother's or any of her relatives. It was completely unfamiliar. I saw a man come out to greet her. My stomach dropped as I watched them embrace and then kiss in the driveway, arms wrapped around each other as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't breathe. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, and I was caught in the wreckage. They went back inside together, as if nothing unusual had happened. In that moment, everything fell into place, the odd timings, the strange excuses, the lies about volunteering. She had been leading a double life, deceiving me every day. My first impulse was to call Mom to vent and get comfort, but I held back. I couldn't risk tipping Sophia off. I needed undeniable proof, concrete evidence that this wasn't a one-time mistake but a long-term affair. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering evidence, photos, text messages, call records, anything that could confirm her betrayal. I even met with a lawyer to protect my assets, knowing that without a prenuptial agreement, I'd be vulnerable when the divorce came through. The confrontation, finally, the day came when I confronted her. I sat her down calmly and told her I knew about her affair. At first, she tried to deny it, but as I presented the evidence, photos of her with that man, screenshots of their texts, records of the days she lied about volunteering, she had no choice but to confess. She admitted that the man was her high school boyfriend, a fact I had already suspected from some quick research on Facebook. She tried to downplay it, calling it a stupid mistake, nothing serious. I wasn't having it. I looked her in the eyes and told her firmly that I was filing for divorce. She was shocked. Maybe for a moment she thought she could talk her way out of it. But when her pleas to reconsider fell on deaf ears, I knew that I couldn't trust her again. I told her to pack her things and leave immediately. I then created a group chat with my parents and Sophia's mother, laying out all the evidence so that everyone would know the full truth behind the divorce. I wanted to prevent any false narratives from spinning. As expected, reactions were intense. My mom was furious that Sophia had betrayed me, and both she and Sophia's mother pleaded with me to reconsider. But my dad stood by me, reassuring me that I deserved better, and that no one should stay with the cheating partner. A week after I filed for divorce, things took another turn. Sophia and her mother showed up at my house unexpectedly, and then Sophia revealed she was pregnant with my child. I was in disbelief. I refused to believe I was the father, given everything that had happened. Sophia's mother lashed out at me, accusing me of ruining her daughter's life by walking away. Later, my own mom doubled down on her pleas, arguing that a baby could somehow heal our broken marriage, insisting that I consider the child's future. She even threatened to testify against me in court to force me to pay child support, saying, "DNA doesn't matter. Family is family." She was determined to claim the baby as her grandchild. no matter what. True to her word, during the divorce proceedings, my mother testified against me. It was one of the most painful betrayals I've ever experienced. My lawyer and I fought hard to show the court that Sophia's infidelity was undeniable, and that there was a real possibility the baby wasn't mine. But both my mom and Sophia's mother insisted that her affair was nothing more than a mistake. That's where I am now, a man betrayed, forced to confront not only the lies of my wife but also the painful duplicity of my own family. In a world where DNA is supposed to matter, my mom's definition of family twisted the truth, and the fallout has left me questioning everything I once believed. I'm moving forward with the divorce, determined to rebuild my life from the wreckage, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to trust again. The judge ruled that no final decision on child support or paternity could be made until after the baby was born and a proper paternity test was conducted. They downplayed Sophia's infidelity, as if it were some innocent mistake, arguing that because Sophia and I had been intimate just weeks before our separation, the baby must be mine. I felt a small victory amid a draining and painful process, relieved that I wouldn't be forced to support a child that might not be mine without solid evidence. But my mother, Sophia, and her mother were livid with the outcome. Later, my mother confronted me and said she wished I wasn't her child, insisting that if I were truly a man, I should pull my pants up and accept Sophia's child as mine, regardless of what the paternity test might show. Over the months that followed, she went around badmouthing me to everyone in our family, painting me as the villain who ruined my marriage over what she claimed was just a one-time mistake by Sophia. No matter how much evidence or logical argument I presented, she clung to her narrative, blaming me for everything that went wrong. For everyone asking, Sophia now argues that since I probably won't have kids anytime soon, I should consider this baby mine, even though she cheated on me. She also revealed that the man she was having an affair with, whom she called sweetheart, had refused to marry her and was never ready to settle down, which is why she married me in the first place. It's clear she used me as a cash cow while continuing her affair. Honestly, I hope she takes him to court for child support, but at this point I just don't care anymore. I took everyone's advice and made a Facebook post publicly announcing that I am not the father of Sophia's child. I was tired of my mom's constant support for Sophia, despite the betrayal that tore apart my marriage. Soon after I posted, my mom called me furious because people started turning on her. She accused me of betraying her, ironically, given that she had already backstabbed me by testifying in court and trying to force me to pay child support. At first, many of my mom's friends and relatives believed her, but now that the paternity test results are in, it's clear she was wrong about Sophia. People are calling her out in the comments and in person, telling her she needs to be a better parent to me, and that I'm the true victim in all of this. After that call, my mom and dad had a huge fight. He was fed up with her constant bullying and threats, especially her crazy insistence that I accept Sophia's child, even though it isn't mine. Update 3. It's been 5 months since my last update, and my parents have decided to separate. This past month, my mom has refused to change her ways. She's even started calling herself grandma to Sophia's baby. She gives Sophia money every month and volunteers to babysit, as if she's finally living out her dream of having a daughter. Meanwhile, my dad has grown tired of it all. He thinks it's borderline inappropriate and wants nothing to do with Sophia or her child. This has sparked multiple fights, and my mom refuses to take any accountability. As a result, my dad has moved out and is now staying with me. It breaks my heart that my mom is choosing to focus on my cheater ex-wife's daughter over her own family. My dad will be consulting a lawyer this week to move forward with the divorce.